Hundreds of sailors drifted in the waters of the Pacific Ocean for 4 days, while one by one, they were devoured by sharks. No, this isn't the plot of a shark attack movie. This is the true story of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, a disaster considered one of the deadliest in the history of the US Navy. In this video you'll learn how negligence from the command led to the tragedy, why no one searched for the Indianapolis crew after the sinking, what drove the captain to take his own life, and how this all connects to Hiroshima. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more fascinating videos. Subscribed? Then let's dive in. The heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis was launched in 1931. For the first few years, it served as a transport for President Roosevelt and high-ranking officials. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the Indianapolis was on exercises in the ocean and escaped unscathed. It later participated in operations across the Pacific, earning over a dozen battle stars. During the Battle of Okinawa, one of the bloodiest conflicts in the Pacific theater, the cruiser's anti-aircraft guns shot down 7 enemy planes. But the ship didn't come away unscathed. It was attacked by a kamikaze pilot and suffered significant damage. Despite this, it managed to reach San Francisco Bay. The cruiser remained in repair until July. At the time, the ship's captain, Charles McVay, informed his superiors, "The ship is overloaded with military equipment and in a critical situation, it could easily capsize." His warning was ignored by command. And unfortunately, his prediction came true. On July 12, the cruiser's commander received an order. On July 16, the ship was to depart from the California coast and deliver a secret cargo to the Tinian base in the northern Mariana Islands. As few people as possible were to know about the mission. For this reason, the cruiser was to sail without an escort. The ship's departure and arrival at ports were not recorded. This level of secrecy was no coincidence. On board the Indianapolis was nearly half of the world's supply of enriched uranium at the time, along with components of the atomic bomb codenamed Little Boy. 3 weeks later, this bomb would be dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Just hours before the cruiser's departure, the first atomic explosion in history shook the desert of New Mexico. This was the test of Little Boy's sibling. The test was a success. The Indianapolis reached its destination on July 26, 10 days later. Along the way, it even managed to set a speed record. From San Francisco to Pearl Harbor, where a refueling stop was planned, the cruiser sailed in just 74 hours. After delivering the cargo, the ship's commander received new orders. The Indianapolis was to head to Guam, an island nearby. From there, on the morning of July 28, it was to proceed to the Philippine city of Leyte. The crew was scheduled to undergo training there before joining the battles. This part of the Pacific was considered relatively safe. The main Japanese forces were much farther north, anticipating an Allied attack on the Japanese archipelago. The only potential threat was enemy submarines. For days before the Indianapolis left Guam, a Japanese submarine had sunk an American destroyer in the Philippine Sea. Naval intelligence was aware of the presence of enemy submarines in the area. However, Captain McVay of the Indianapolis was not informed of the possible danger. Before departure, McVay requested a destroyer escort equipped with anti-submarine radars. The cruiser itself lacked such equipment. His request was denied, even though American ships rarely crossed the Philippine Sea alone. Information about the Indianapolis was sent to headquarters in Leyte, but the message was lost. As a result, no one at the destination knew about the cruiser. On July 30th, shortly after midnight and 800 kilometers from the nearest land, the Indianapolis was struck by 2 torpedoes on its side. The cruiser began to list to the starboard and bow but continued moving at high speed. Sailors began abandoning the ship 7 minutes after the attack. The cruiser's engines were still running and its propellers were spinning. Survivors recalled in horror how their comrades blindly jumped into the darkness, landing on the ship's working blades. An hour later, when the Japanese submarine reloaded its torpedo tubes and resurfaced, the target was no longer visible. The cruiser had sunk within 15 minutes. As it went down, the Indianapolis managed to send out a distress signal. The signal was received at 3 American bases but was dismissed as Japanese misinformation. No one was sent to rescue the crew. Around 300 sailors went down with the cruiser. The remaining 900 were scattered in the water along the ship's final path. Many suffered injuries, burns, and fractures. Only a portion managed to don life vests. Some were fortunate enough to find rafts, rectangular wooden frames with rope mesh supporting a plank floor. During the first day, the issue of life vests became less pressing. The severely injured succumbed to their wounds. Many had swallowed diesel fuel that had spilled across the water's surface, leading to delirium and convulsions. Although the waters of the Pacific at this latitude are relatively warm, sailors suffered from hypothermia at night. When the sun rose, its scorching rays burned their skin. But the worst was yet to come. The smell of blood attracted sharks. The predator's first victims were the dead crew members. Bodies would suddenly disappear underwater, only for fragments or just a life vest to resurface later. Desperate to protect themselves, the sailors huddled together, pulling their legs tightly against their bodies. By the third day, the sharks began attacking the living. Hallucinations set in among the men. Someone would suddenly scream that they saw an island or a ship and swim toward the mirage. Sharp fins quickly appeared nearby. A surviving ship doctor described how one sailor started shouting, "There's a Japanese soldier here, and he's trying to kill me." A fight broke out and many sailors drowned. At night, sharks surrounded the survivors in a ring of fins. The sailors remembered it as the most terrifying night of their lives. David Harrell, who ended up in a group of 80 people after the sinking, recalled that by the third night, the group had been halved, and by morning he found only 17 comrades left around him. Another crew member, Sherman Booth, shared that on the fourth day, a young man from Oklahoma saw a shark eating his best friend. Unable to bear it, he grabbed a knife, clenched it between his teeth, and swam after the shark. He was never seen again. After 72 hours following the ship's sinking, the survivors had no strength left. Meanwhile, the life vests began to fail. They were only designed to last for 48 hours. Few remembered the night and day of the fourth day. People drifted, barely conscious, having lost all hope of rescue. The site of the Indianapolis wreck was discovered by chance. On August 2nd, around 10 a.m., an American bomber was patrolling the ocean. Suddenly, the commander noticed that an antenna had come loose from its mounting and was striking the side of the plane. A dangerous situation. He handed control over to the co-pilot and went to discuss the situation with the engineer. Stepping out of the cockpit, the commander glanced down at the ocean through a hatch in the floor and was horrified. Within minutes, he sent a radio message reporting the sighting of people and dropped an inflatable raft. Unfortunately, the raft turned out to be punctured and sank. However, the sailors understood that they had been found. All they had to do was wait for rescue. The first to arrive at the disaster site was a Catalina amphibious plane. Lieutenant Marks rescued 56 people, some of whom had to be placed on the plane's wings. For the first time in 90 hours, the survivors felt a solid surface beneath them. They could neither stand nor sit upright. After drinking fresh water, most of them fell into a deep sleep. 6 arriving ships combed the area of the ocean around the site. Out of 1,195 crew members, only 317 survived. The sinking of the Indianapolis became the deadliest loss of life from a single attack in U.S. Navy history. Among the survivors was the ship's captain, Charles McVay. However, his ordeal did not end there. He was charged with causing the cruiser's sinking and faced a court-martial. The accusation claimed that the Indianapolis had been traveling in a straight line rather than zigzagging, which supposedly could have helped evade the torpedoes. During the trial, even the commander of the Japanese submarine that sank the ship testified. He stated that under those conditions he would have hit the target regardless of whether it had been zigzagging or not. The military court ignored this testimony and found McVay guilty. Charles McVay became the only U.S. Navy ship captain during World War II to be court-martialed for losing his ship in combat. Surviving crew members believed that McVay had been made a scapegoat. The true culprits of the tragedy, according to the survivors, were those who sent the cruiser into a dangerous zone without an escort and then failed to notice its disappearance, neglecting to initiate a search. Soon after, the verdict was overturned and McVay was reinstated. However, he felt disgraced and resigned on his own. For the rest of his life, he received hateful letters from the relatives of sailors who had perished on the Indianapolis. One such letter read, "Merry Christmas. Our family would have had a happier one if you hadn't killed our son." In 1968, Charles McVay took his own life, shooting himself on the lawn of his home. He was fully exonerated only in 2001. The wreckage of the Indianapolis was discovered in 2017, by which time only 18 crew members were still alive. You won't have to wait that long for our new videos. To make sure you don't miss them, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like and share it with your friends. See you next time.